I'm Norma Jean Shaw with the Royal Examiner, and today we are talking with Mark Butler. He is a local resident of Warren County, and he's a police officer in Northern Virginia, and is also a business owner. Welcome to you, Mark Butler. You're a busy guy.
We are kind of busy.
You are fascinating to me for many reasons. You've had 2 decades almost in law enforcement in Northern Virginia, and you find time to traipse about the country educating folks, law enforcement, security firms, even a college student who might be going abroad for the first time for a semester abroad. Let's talk about the kinds of things that your company does.
All right. A lot of it started out at Northern Virginia with human trafficking. The human trafficking is really huge, and it's really more marketable than even selling narcotics or anything else. And what we found after all the years of working human trafficking, a lot of the criminal organizations, they're so organized with the internet and so forth. It can be a small group of 4 16-year-olds with MS-13 trafficking to a more international organization of multicultures and cultures. And it's not just one culture in general. Like when most people think of organized crime, the first thing they think of is the Godfather and the Italians. But if you look across history, it's all cultures, and it doesn't matter. It's not devoted to just one.
Okay, so it's not Tony Soprano anymore.
No.
And when you talk about gangs such as MS-13, so what you're saying is human trafficking is very profitable. They're using the services of humans whom they, by force, threat, somehow
Coercion.
they control them, coerce, okay, and they force them to, usually it's sexual acts.
Actually, no.
Or slavery.
Tell us it's a little bit of both, actually. And most people think of human trafficking as in the sex field.
Sure.
Though it's there, and there's a lot of predominance in it. I'd say it's even more so in indentured servitude. And that's been going on since even the creation of our country. If you think about it, when they said, hey, send prisoners over, and you work 5 years for Lord Fairfax or whoever it might have been, and then you're free. You're a free man.
And for folks who are tuning in, we mean the Lord Fairfax, not the college. We're going back to the country's creation.
Correct.
Okay.
So indentured servitude's been huge throughout the world forever, and this isn't anything new, but it's hidden so well now that the internet has just made it so easy to do a lot of this stuff.
That makes it scary too, and it happens in Virginia. It happens in all the states. It's really a very prevalent crime.
And there's after teaching all over, I got done doing a human trafficking case with U.S. Customs, and when I was done with my case of many years of infiltrating organized crime groups and actually smuggling bodies into the country for them to get to the head of the snake, per se. We actually started teaching law enforcement. And I'd go to many places and I'd say, hey, you have human trafficking in your area? And they would say, no, we don't. And then once we start discussing a lot of their telltale signs, they were like, oh my gosh, we do have it.
What are telltale signs? If I were a parent and I would be concerned about things that are going on around my children, my teenagers particularly, what are some things that folks might look for?
Well, if I was a parent, first thing I would look for is look at your daughter or look at your son and see any major changes that they're doing. Because if the internet is used like Backpage and Facebook and this and that, so if they're looking for a target, and that's what they call it, and that's what they believe, it's a target. They're looking for someone who has maybe low self-esteem, needing attention, just really reaching out. They're crying out for something. And if you notice your child with a lot of different changes in their personality and behavior, you might want to look into their internet connections and their friends a little bit more, and they may start getting reclusive because they may be embarrassed. They may know that what they're doing is wrong, but they can't get out of it once they get in. And a lot of them, once they get in, can't get out.
So they're actually coerced. I imagine if you're having trouble with your mom and you say, you know, my mom's terrible, we fight all the time, then if they're grooming that person, or if they want to get that person and traffic them, then they would sympathize and say, yeah, my mom's terrible too.
Correct.
And they would gain trust, and then they would indoctrinate that person into
Exactly.
the behavior they want, and then that the victim feels trapped and perhaps threatened sometimes.
Right. And I actually first learned about it when I was in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And I was overseas in Korea. And I would see how the mama-sans would take the runaways off the street and bring them to work in the bar, and they'd have them sweep the floors, and they'd have them do this and that. And then when the girls would be like, hey, you know what, I think I'm going to go home, go back home. I said, mama-san would say, ah, you owe me money. You can't go back home. Well, how am I going to make that money? Well, there's many ways you can make money.
Wow.
And that's how they get into the illegal activities. And I mean, we could go on really for hours just on the different ways to get into the groups. And
So, well, let's talk about the youth of today. They're different, certainly, than when you and I grew up. They don't do things the way we did. They have technology that we don't have. And they don't view police in the same way. Certainly when I was growing up, you were respectful to police officers, and you didn't hate them just because they wore a uniform. And I don't know that we have such a problem in Front Royal Warren County, but certainly in some areas, wearing a uniform is having a target on your back.
you know, just the other day I was working at a traffic stop, and a bus of middle school kids drove by, and they all yelled out the windows, F the police, and
Wow.
man, we're talking about 11, 12-year-olds.
That's
And
rough.
It's really the way we have gotten away. I blame partially on law enforcement as a whole, but also just our way our society is. But it's as much law enforcement's fault as it is, I believe, because we don't get out of our cruisers. We don't speak to the community. We don't do the true community policing that needs to be brought back.
Well, now, that's a sweeping generalization. I mean, you police in a different area than here where you live, so.
Correct.
Yeah. And there are some areas where officers are probably afraid to get out of their cars, and thank goodness we don't have that here. But,
Well, when I say that, Norma Jean, what I'm saying is, I'm very fortunate that I was able to raise my children in Warren County, because, like I said, when I was out doing international operations and so forth, I didn't have to really worry but that my children were being surrounded by gangs and so forth, because the Warren County Sheriff's Office and Police Department has been a great agencies for many years, and they're there to protect and serve. That part I agree with you, but the part I'm getting at is you can't do true community policing from behind your steering wheel or your cruiser. You have to get out in the shadows and walk the streets and know the community to find out what's actually happening when our backs are turned.
yeah, and I do hear from a lot of probably folks who are more senior than we are, who say that's one of the things that they really miss. They miss the officers being more community involved and walking through the public and maybe downtown. But
Correct.
I guess times are a little bit different. Speaking of things that are happening more now than in the past, I know phone scams are something that's been on your radar a lot. It's something that you teach classes about.
Yes, ma'am.
What's on the horizon, or what's out there right now?
Well, just last year, almost $10 billion was scammed from U.S. citizens or Americans.
And we're not talking everybody's old grandma.
No, we're talking about it from anyone. And it's so easy because they draw on heartstrings, and it's so hard for law enforcement to actually attack it and remove it, because it could be someone in England, or it could be someone in Somalia, India, or wherever, using it over the phone just by getting a credit card number. But I've also seen businesses, which is huge. You guys say he's running a restaurant, which this actually happened. Individual was running a restaurant, and obviously was up all night restaurant closed at 2. He gets a call at 7 a.m. It says, hey, I'm such and such power company, and we're getting ready to shut your power down because you haven't paid your bill. Well, he doesn't have his books in front of him. He's writing checks all over. He goes, well, how much do I owe you? You owe us $3,000.
Wow.
And he's like, well, right now, I only know I have $1,600 in this account. I'll write you a check, or I'll give you a check over the phone. And he did it. And then he got back to his office. He went ahead and turned around, went back to work. He got up and realized he had just paid the phone company, or the power company. And I got a call and responded, and I was like, wow. To actually find that person, you'll find that it's a drop phone or something like that. So out of necessity and harsh, they know how to do these scams. So what we try to do is we try to warn people about the different scams, like the IRS scams or so on and so forth.
Let's talk about that one really quick. The IRS will never call you and say, we want money or you're going to jail.
Never.
They always send a letter first.
And you'll probably get a certified letter.
Yes, they are not going to call, and if they ever were to ask you for money, it wouldn't be on a green dot card.
It would not be on a green dot card.
Okay.
Amazon card or
No,
anything else.
no. Or pay my mom's bill
Right,
and,
right.
car payment will be square.
My mother-in-law actually, just the other day was called. I was at work and I'm working the street, and she calls me and she goes, hey, Mark, I need to talk to you. And I was like, what's up? How? And she goes, well, are you at work? And I said, yeah. She goes, well, I can't tell you now because I don't want to get you upset. I was like, come on, just tell me. And she goes, Josh, which my son Josh, who was raised here, who played, in school here and so forth, says Josh was in an accident in New York City. He T-boned a car, and the woman in the car was pregnant, and she lost a baby. So Josh has been arrested for DUI and this and that. And I was like, hold on, because my son Josh is in the Air Force in California. And I was like, well, why would Josh be up there?
Sure.
He went to New York, and she said, it was him. I said, are you sure it was him? She goes, yeah. And I said, and then they said, they took my cell phone and so forth. I said, did you call Josh? And she goes, no, because they said they took his phone. I said, well, I think you got scammed, just hang tight. I'll call you right back. So I called Josh and I said, hey, are you okay? He goes, yeah, I'm on base in California.
Yeah, in California.
And nothing happened. And so luckily what they had wanted was $4,000 bond over a credit card.
Wow.
And she was
that close.
Real close to losing $4,000. Now, they're retired and they're on a budget. So therefore, $4,000 on anyone's budget could be extremely disastrous for them. Yeah. But if you think about it, $10 billion just because of drawing on heartstrings. So this is something that's big and it needs to get out to the communities. What would you do on this? And before you start sending money right away, research it, back it, review it.
Get a number, call back.
Investigate it.
Sure,
exactly.
investigate.
Call back.
So you teach these types of classes to police officers so they know how to deal with them, but you also teach to the public, to security firms, you teach crisis intervention.
We teach a lot. We have a lot of officers from all over the country. Like for instance, Highway Patrol, we have a company that teaches motorcycle training, advanced motorcycle training, razor systems. And we're big with that. We teach undercover operations, surveillance techniques.
And with, I guess, counterfeit money is getting better and better. Looks more like the real thing. But fraudulent documents are a big thing now. I understand that's another area that you're teaching out of your firm.
Fraudulent documents are huge. And if you think about it, since 9/11, when many of the terrorists that were in our country, they actually were stopped at some point in time with a fraudulent document. The bad part about it is the average police officer can't tell the difference between a real Social Security card and a fake one. So if a police officer in law enforcement can't, how in the world can a business? And that puts that business in jeopardy because who are you really hiring if you don't know the difference? And if we look at the housing market when we went into that little recession, a lot of it was banks giving bad loans because of fraudulent documents. And then you have the people open up bank accounts fraudulently and so forth, drawing on credit cards and so on. And then just our interest rate, it's just horrible for our economy. But it's really hard for people to actually know the difference between a real one and a fake one without any training.
Okay, so you at 3D Consulting can straighten that up for businesses and for municipalities, that you offer that.
Yes, ma'am. Our class that we teach basically breaks it down to a very simple science, where you can almost look at any card and say, if it doesn't pass the smell test, taste test, and look test, then you might want to check it out.
Okay, and if folks are interested in contacting you about what you offer at 3D Consulting, how can they do that?
We have a website, 3D Professional Training. It's www.3dptc.com, and all our contact information is on that website.
Well, thank you so much for stopping by to educate us. That's a lot of information to swallow, but I'm sure folks will be referring back to what you shared with us, because there are a lot of nasty people out there, unfortunately.
Well, there is.
And a lot of good ones too.
There's a lot of good people out there.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it.